Hi there, good morning to you. George sat in the back row of the church, a permanent scowl on his face. He was a man not easily pleased, and whenever his name come up in conversation, somebody would say, "Why does he keep coming to church?" No one ever could come up with the answer, but one thing was certain: George was hard on ministers. He said, "I've heard hundreds of sermons over the years, but I haven't heard many that I liked." Some who sat near him wondered if George ever actually heard a sermon, because every week as the minister began, you would hear the steady click, click, click from George's pew. If anyone turned round to see, they would see the sunbeam reflecting from George's chrome-plated fingernail clippers. "Minister," George said at church one day, "I don't get much out of your sermons." Now, before he could restrain himself, the long-suffering minister blusted out, "I don't know, George, but at least you get a manicure every Sunday." Is anybody listening? That's the question that haunts every preacher. Is anybody listening? Sermons, by definition, are meant to be heard. Somebody speaks to people who come to hear something, and the gospel of God is entrusted to the vibration of words across the eardrum. I must confess that sometimes ministers like myself forget this. I remember attending a lecture in preaching, and the professor asked one of my fellow students to give a short homily. And then the professor said, and I can remember it, he said to him, "I could have sworn that that sermon had been written by George Adam Smith and preached to Queen Victoria. Hey, come down off your theological high horse, and will you speak to Auntie Mary in the front pew?" It was good advice, because the preacher should be speaking to real people in the hope they'll listen. And yet, is anybody ever listening? Are you listening this morning? That's the question I love. And I love the story of the time when Jesus went back to his hometown congregation. Imagine relatives, old friends crammed into the third pew, bursting with pride, and maybe the teacher peers through cataracts and remembers that nice kid in primary one. All his brothers wondered if episodes from family life would feature in the sermon illustrations. But in the story in Mark's Gospel, there's no mention of Joseph. If he was still in the picture, maybe he was too embarrassed to admit publicly that this was his boy and he had grown up to be a preacher. Who knows if Mary came to listen? Perhaps she was busy giving one of her daughters directions for the party after the service, baking a cake with the words, "Welcome home, Jesus." In any case, Jesus began to speak, and they took offence at him. There he was among his own people, surrounded by his own family, and they didn't listen to him. And as sermons go, it was pretty good, and it was short, and yet I don't think anybody had ears to hear. Anybody listening? Maybe not. There are many reasons why not. Some people are familiar with the message, and they just say, "I've heard it all before." Or they might recognise the messenger saying, "This isn't anybody special." In Scotland, we can often put people down with the phrase, "I ken his father." So is anybody listening? Hearing the good news is a risky business. The word can judge our commitments, undermine our allegiances, or rearrange our emotional furniture. That's what Scripture can do. The gospel may raise questions about our lifestyle, lead us to do hard things. No wonder somebody once warned there are two kinds of sermons that people don't want. They don't want to hear them, and that's the bad sermons, but also the good sermons. I will leave it to you to judge. But again, thanks for listening to me.